Hey, this is La from TGL. We're into our third year living with COVID. Last year we did a very popular video about the challenges that the logistics industry faced. So we'll be doing a reaction video on how much of what we said back then came true. At the same time, give you guys a bit of an insight in terms of what we are facing or likely to face in 2022. Shipping lines are essentially the masters of their own domain, where pricing has been at historical highs. I've been in the industry for a shy of 25 years and I've never ever seen a situation like we've seen right now. Well, I think it's fair to say that was proven to be the case. The whole industry essentially went into unprecedented times where prices were skyrocketing. People never paid so much and got so little in return in terms of service, stability and consistency. They've never had the opportunity to charge as much and having the demand to be so strong. So COVID has really turned the logistics industry upside down. When the news of COVID first broke out, all of the world, we all did one thing, and that was knee-jerk, thinking that things were going to slow down. In hindsight, to be honest, that was probably the most illogical train of thought that, in fact, most countries fell into. The reality is, we should have seen it coming. People were going to stay home. They couldn't move as much. No more traveling. Yeah. So again, a lot of that. We continue to see that happening in 2021 throughout the year, and all the discretionary income were being spent, all this pent-up energy that we couldn't travel and use on experiences and services went into goods, which really shot up the demand for goods and therefore shipping capacity. A lot of money was saved from these travel dollars to be spent within the economy. So, that's why we're seeing all of the retail online e-commerce boom that is happening. So the initial reaction and the knee-jerk reaction was to wind down capacity. And then we didn't anticipate the influx of demand. So it's interesting to know here that a lot of the carriers with that knee-jerk chose to dry dock a lot of their vessels. In fact, they also chose to scrap some of those vessels because there was a stage that there wasn't any demand, maybe for a period of 1 or 2 months when COVID first happened. And it was proven economically more beneficial to these ship owners to scrap the metal than actually run those ships at a loss. This is why we're seeing the severe shortage of capacity, because there's not enough vessels to cater to the over-demand. So, it's basically just stretching this rubber band to both ends of the extreme, and it's snapping in the middle right now. Prices have increased 4 or 5-fold compared to pre-COVID times. This was shot at a time where it was 4 or 5-fold. In actual fact, there were periods throughout 2021 where it actually went close to 10-fold. And even there were instances personally experienced by our own customers and within our own business where it doesn't matter what amount of money the customer wanted to pay, we simply couldn't move that freight. The USA was a massive problem. They had, I'm sure you guys all seen on the news, there were close to 100 ships waiting to dock at Long Beach terminal, which is massive bottlenecks and what have you, and simply there wasn't enough space. There's so many elements involved, and that's what is very important for the general public to understand what is happening behind the scenes and why they are seeing their goods prices increase. Why is that a couch? And prices have increased, right? And this is what's causing a lot of the issues right now, which we can get into shortly, which is inflation. That's going to be the catchphrase for 2020, inflation. The biggest challenge right now is that we can't actually accurately quote our customers. Say today is January, we will get pricing for February, maybe second week or third week of January, so we know what to quote out to customers in February. The challenging part is that we're not getting those pricing costs until sometime first week in February. So this remains to be the reality, albeit, we've sort of gotten into a flow in terms of how to work with this reality, not having accurate costs and then still be able to quote our customers. And much of it is, again, like what we will allude to later on in that video, was to educate. Things become a lot easier when people understand the challenges clearly. What's even challenging now is that we are also asking our customers to book well in advance just to have to mitigate all of the disruptions from not loading or not moving their shipments on time. So the customer is on the receiving end going, well, you want me to book early, but you can't tell me how much it's going to cost. And we can't because the shipping lines are not giving us that capability to do so. So essentially, we are asking our customer to take a huge leap of faith in writing us a big blank check. That's the reality now.
So I'll probably add to that, pricing and how to quote customer was a massive challenge for the for freight forwarders and freight forwarding industry. We need to also face up to the real challenges of cash flow as well. If you've got costs that's gone up 5 times, 10 times, it doesn't matter what money you're making, you've got to be able to have enough reserves at the bank to cash flow these increases in cost. And this is where the smaller size businesses is going to struggle because no one keeps cash reserves of 5-10-fold, right? So that has been the single most impactful challenge on why smaller companies in freight forwarding industry weren't able to grow their business. So that was one of the very important realities in 2021 for freight forwarding companies is that we can have opportunities, but one, we don't have enough capacity nor enough cash flow to sustain the growth that was coming into the door.
There is no silver bullet. There is no SOP that is going to be black and white because no one knows. You're not the only one on the boat, for lack of a better pun. So it's all about saying, well, this is what's happening. Let's be flexible with it. Let's make sure that our downstream of our supply chain also understands that. And then ultimately us as consumers, so a little bit of understanding, I think that's probably the holistic solution to it all.
Yeah, so I think not getting our deliveries on time has becoming the norm now. And I think the community as a whole is sort of having a lot more empathy on that front, which is exactly, it's really the only thing you can do. With regards to the importers themselves or the international traders themselves, how do you confront the challenges of increasing costs? Well, you have to raise your costs, and that's what we're seeing right now. Products has gone up in price, and which is causing inflationary pressures. Which is again, so we're circling around, it's coming to inflation.
Pricing will continue to go high. A 40-foot container from China to Australia. This year, I think within the next 30 to 60 days, it will crack the $10,000 mark just from port to port.
I was pretty accurate on that one. and I think it was literally within 30 days of that, when we did that video, prices went over 10,000 and it stayed over 10,000 for a good few months. And even right now, certain ports out of China continues to be above that $10,000 mark. So, yeah.
Things might stabilise a bit towards the back end of next year, but I don't see it to be a dramatic shift. If I was a goods trader, I will be getting comfortable with the current challenges and really get used to the idea that this is normality now. And I need to go plan my business around this normality.
I might not be too accurate there because my current thinking changes a little bit to that idea. There's a lot of disruption, yes, as long as COVID is around. However, I think for 2022, certain things will be very different to 2021. And hint, I already said this a few times in a few of my other comments earlier on in this video. I mentioned inflation. Inflation is a problem because it places pressures on the society and community, on all of us, right? Because things cost more and what have you. So that will have pressures on salaries, expectations and what have you. And then, the government want to cool that down if it's too high or above their expectation. And normally how they do it through monetary policy, which is basically raising of interest rates. So cheap money isn't going to be around for too long because there's been too much money flooding to the market where there's too much spending going around. Everyone's gone crazy and there's, demand is gone through the roof. So as soon as the government raises interest rate, you'll find the entire market and the sentiment will start cooling off. So we will see a tapering off of demand. And at the same time, we also got to realize, This is our third year into COVID normal now. We have a lot of expats returning to their countries, buying goods, and demand went through the roof for that reason. We have a lot of people that couldn't travel and go out and enjoy experiences and dining. All that money was saved. People started working from home, buying a lot of different type of goods to make that a reality. But guess what? A lot of these spending, you're not going to change a TV every year. You're not going to buy a new couch every year. After 2 years of this type of spending, it's going to run out of steam. If you're an importer, you have to expect your volumes will drop. You cannot continue to think that your demand will continue to remain high. People are only going to buy so much. Omicron is here. It's spreading everywhere. In Sydney, Australia at the moment, our cases are close to 100,000 cases a day. When we talk Australia-centric, because of our small population, even if we have 100% infection rate, the disruption can only go on for so long. All right. So my first prediction for 2022 will be that the Omicron situation will plateau come end of February. And really by March, things will get back to normal again. But now that's Australia. Of course, as part of the wider community, we need to see what China is doing, being supplier of over 90% of the global goods. It's very important to see what's happening there and how that would affect logistics. Well, China's policy with COVID is very different to Australia. China still have the COVID zero policy, which means that as soon as there's any sort of infection, they're locking the entire city down or a terminal down. So we've seen that already at the moment. Tianjin just being locked down because there was a couple of cases there. Port of Ningbo was locked down. There was a couple of cases there. So all of that would add to the disruption of logistics. That's the situation on one hand, which I think will cause the momentary short-term disruption to supply chain and logistics, and which will keep the pricing of moving goods relatively high. But we can't avoid that demand, what I'm predicting, will drop because a lot of these goods simply will not be imported at the amount or the frequency that it has been over the course of the last couple of years. So basically this whole situation is a bit of on a knife's edge. It can go either way. I personally feel 2022 won't be as crazy of a year as 2021 because as soon as interest rate goes up, people are not going to be spending. The capacity will free up on ships, on planes. So a lot of our customers, here's a prediction, should expect less capacity issues and also their pricing to reduce or to come down somewhat. Of course, it's not going to go back to pre-COVID days, guys. I want you guys to really understand that pre-COVID rates will never happen again. Oh, by the way, they are bringing new ships in now. So they were predicting all these new ships are going to come into service, around 2023. So, with demand going down, new ships being brought in, it's going to have some downward pressure on pricing. If you're an importer, it is a sweet and sour thing, right? If the shipping rates are high, it means demand is high, which means that theoretically speaking, your market is growing and you can sell more, right? So it's all proportion. One would say, well, I want cheaper rates. Well, that's not necessarily a good thing. If rates drop, it means that there is not enough demand. So therefore, it means that your business won't be able to sell as much as you would like. So it's a double-edged sword which way you look at it. But my own personal prediction, pricing won't be as hot as 2021. USA is a massive market, obviously, and due to the population size, they still got quite a bit of painful months ahead with the Omicron sweeping through the country. So we can continue to expect major disruptions across the US continent or the North American continent. If you're in Australia, we're a little bit more fortunate due to our small population and the proximity with Asia. So I would say we won't experience as much of disruption as compared to the US. So there is a trend at the moment and a reality that a lot of these larger shipping lines have really gobbled up some larger freight forwarding companies, which they want to really sort of draw their tentacles into the freight forwarding sector. So obviously with the shipping lines now buying some larger organization freight forwarding, they want to basically encroach onto the space of becoming a freight forwarder. It looks great on paper, but I can assure you, it's not going to translate well into reality. Companies large or small have been shifting away from larger freight forwarding companies purely due to service. Organizations or competitors that we have simply do not do that very well. Because don't forget, we are still a service industry, and we always like to hear a real person's voice and understanding what that person can do for us and whether they understand what our needs are. If you're a shipping line, never underestimate the human desire for service. And unless you can control the larger organizations that you are, and to be able to give that one-to-one personal service, you simply will not achieve the objectives that set out to become a freight forwarder if you're a shipping line.